understood. Still, when the country was being divided, with each side convinced that they were doing God's will, you had to be wondering, what is God's will in this crisis? What was God's will? There was no answer. And both sides thought they had the answer. But Lincoln did not want to assume that either side was right. What's great about him is that he had a deep and abiding suspicion and hostility to those that thought, there's no possibility I'm wrong. Lincoln didn't want to assume that either side was right or wrong. So, in your program, you have a pink insert. These are the steps, the way that I see that Abe Lincoln stood his ground and achieved his goal. And I didn't have a title for it, but today I do. And you might want to write it. It's called The Hero's Journey. It is. And what you could write is my hero's journey. Because at this present time, in this point of the story that we're at, he didn't know what to do. He was in the same place that we're in with our issues. And so it's our journey, because each of us can do just what he did and have similar results in our life. So why I say that this first thing that he did was remarkable was that he was willing to look and say, I have my opinion of this and I could be wrong. The first step in the hero's journey is to be open and to be willing to change. Can you say that with me?
Be open and be willing to change.
That's a whole talk in itself. So, what was admirable about Lincoln was as president, as a politician, he was open to the highest good for all. Now imagine what it was like during that era. There was death, frustration, anger, grief, and suffering everywhere. Do you think he ever thought, maybe I should just let the South secede? I mean, it would have been an easy answer. There's two different paths. They could have just gone their way. Thank God he didn't. Right? But Lincoln chose to be all right with discomfort. And that's the second step in the hero's journey. It's being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because that's what it takes. Looking at your situation, the battle that you're in, the challenge that you're facing, where you're wanting to take that leap and get promoted in your life. Do you want to compromise, turn away, stop trying, accept things the way they are? If you want comfort, then compromise. But if you really want that you hope to have, be comfortable with the discomfort. And you can get comfortable with the discomfort by doing things to strengthen that, like driving a different way home, or not watching your favorite television show. Yeah, those little things that we're so used to doing the way we want to do. We get out of the habit of having things just the way we want them, so we could be open perhaps to something new. Be comfortable in being uncomfortable. So things were miserable. I mean, just at the bottom at that time. Just at the worst that they could be. And then for Lincoln, the bottom came out. Death came to the White House. February 20th, 1862, Abe Lincoln's beautiful, bright, intelligent, and with promise 11-year-old boy, Willie, died of typhoid fever. Can you imagine? He was laid out in a room in the White House. His wife was beset with grief. His children were looking at him for understanding, while he was battle fatigued after being in war and having to hold up the nation. And yet, the young man who was said to be his favorite son died. Dr. Phineas Gurley gave a sermon, a eulogy, at Willie's funeral. And it turned out to be a pivotal moment in Lincoln's life.
What we need in this hour of trial, and what we should seek by earnest prayer, is confidence in him who sees the end from the beginning and doeth all things well. Let us acknowledge his hand and hear his voice and inquire after his will and seek his Holy Spirit as our counselor and guide. And all, in the end, will be well.
This pastor was suggesting to Lincoln that amidst a gruesome war and upon the death of his son, he should trust in a loving God that had a decisive part in everything.
And all, in the end, will be well.
Not long thereafter, Lincoln wrote something on a slip of paper that was intended for no other eyes but his own.
The will of God prevails. In great contests, each party claims to act in accordance with the will of God. Both may be one. One must be wrong. God cannot be for and against the same thing at the same time. I'm almost ready to say that this is probably true, that God wills this contest and will that it shall not end yet.
Lincoln is considering, I'm going to quote from the PBS special, Lincoln is considering this epic and awesome, awful idea that the master of order and goodness is actually in favor in some way of the carnage and suffering because of some larger end.
By his mere quiet power on the minds of the now contestants, he could have either saved or destroyed the Union without a human contest. Yet, the contest began, and having begun, he could give the final victory to either side any day. Yet the contest proceeds.
Lincoln's mind is turned towards the question that out of this affliction, what good may come?
There must be something new and novel that God is interjecting. must be something new in this war.
This would mean that each battle is holy, that it's God's way of interjecting something new. So Lincoln looked at it like this. How did this affliction, what could be new from this? What could be new that would be needed to come through, that God is wanting to come out of this war? What would be new? You know the answer. What would be new? Epiphany. Emancipation. God, Lincoln declared, had decided this question, what is God's will, in favor of the slaves. He called his cabinet together and informed them that he was going to be issuing a proclamation to abolish slavery. Now, that took daunting courage because it was something that he knew or felt he knew what God's will was. But can you imagine how he felt knowing that the response was not going to be fully supported, that there would be resistance? So when he